Hi, Bhargavi. Welcome to Royal Bengal Tea House, Adda. We're
Thank
really
you.
excited to have you here. It's a cold winter afternoon here in New York City, and I know yesterday was your birthday. Happy
Oh my God,
birthday!
thank you.
How are you feeling today?
Really good. It's the first day of New Year for me. So it's nice, and it's nice to be in New York City. Thank you for the chai. And yeah, lovely to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. What brings you to Washington, D.C.?
Well, I moved to DC for work, where I am a public policy professional. And I work in the international development sector. So I help evaluate all the money that countries give to different funds and different like international organizations like the World Bank and the IMF. I help evaluate whether those funds are actually being utilized and what is the impact those funds are having. And that's what I do by profession. Um, Also, in the context of Royal Bengal Tea House, what I actually do also on the side is really invest a lot of time into music. And it has been a great opportunity coming from India. Both before DC, I was in Chicago, both being in Chicago and now DC, and also being very close to New York, of being able to explore and express the music that I pursue, which is South Asian classical music, particularly both Hindustani Khayal and Dhrupad, in all these different cities, collaborating with different musicians, getting to know different communities.
Can you share the story of how you found your voice as a singer and what inspired you to pursue music?
Yeah, sure. I would say a little bit of background where I'm from. I'm from Bihar, which is, again, working in the international development sector. What I do interact with is that a lot of these impact projects are in Bihar. Reason being, it's the poorest state in India. And one of the things why, being from the eastern part of India, it's very close to Bengal, and that's why I think one of the reasons also that I connected with Royal Bengal Tea House, because there's so much similarities in culture and alignment with different cultures and arts that we follow. And the journey being a single girl child that my family chose me to be, I think it's a privilege. I think I have a lot of different, generational gaps between what my parents think and how they look at life. But I think for their age, from where they are, from what background they come from, they're revolutionaries, because one, they gave birth to only one child, one single girl child. It's a big revolution to do, but also put that child into music and dance, which was, they were questioned by their parents, saying that, am I going to become a tawayef and would I earn money? I am earning money, which is really interesting. And but in a and I would proudly like to be a tawayef, why not? And um and so that is how it started. It also started with the fact that my mom really wanted to learn music, and she did not get the opportunity to learn that because of gender barriers. And that's how music was. It was a privilege that it was bestowed on me, and like they put that investment into me becoming a musician. While I was put into music by them, I think I also found a lot of spiritual grounding, a lot of connectedness, a lot of just understanding myself. I think with music, the depths that I'm able to go into in my both emotional and intellectual curiosity, I think that's what has made me continue in the music journey and as a singer.
Beautiful. Growing up, coming from Bihar, and what would you say were some of your influences from the Bengali culture?
I think Bengali culture is, first of all, to mention all these differences between Bengal and Bihar, they only came with colonization, because all these states were one district, the Bengal district.
Yeah.
And the culture is very similar. We use mustard as our primary ingredient. My main festival is Durga Puja. And all my music teachers, up until the most recent guru that I have been Bengali. And so I was very much blended into the whole culture of singing at Durga Puja, and being, I think, inspired by all my music teachers who passed on their traditions and their way of singing, their way of learning. Also, all these people, again, like both of them were married women, uh, again, revolutionaries of their time, being able to pursue their professions and pursue music as their primary professions. I think that was very inspiring to look at. And talking about femininity, and we are talking about gender so much, one of the things, and I've mentioned Durga Puja, I think one of the things that really inspires me about the Bengali culture is the focus on femininity. A lot of focus on Durga, Kali, just the goddess energy, which I think both through like Bengali music, through my own language, which is Maithili, a lot of music in Maithili, is around Bhairavi, around Kali. And I think that has been one of the most inspiring parts of all.
How would you say your identity as a queer artist influence your music and the messages you aim to convey through your art?
I would like to say, to begin with, how I look at classical music, but that is the music that I pursue the most, is that Hindustani khayal, which is khayal and it is creativity, which means boundlessness. It is your thoughts, it's your imagination. You can create anything out of it. That is how I look at queerness. What my definition of queerness is that it is not bounded by anything. A simple example being when we think about romantic relationships or sexual relationships or marital relationships is right in front of us, which is the relationship of Radha and Krishna. When we look at that, it is out of wedlock. It is not bounded by any marital relationships. It does not get the legalized. If they would exist today in the modern world, they would not get the legal legitimacy. But at the same time, it is one of the most celebrated, one of the most highest forms of love that we as a society consider in, say, Hinduism or in the South Asian community. And I think that is what a very prime example of queerness for me is. And how I look at music, therefore, is that this boundlessness, exploring that boundlessness, but also looking at, because so much of South Asian music is lyrically related to mythology, related to all these different figures and characters in our history. How do we make sure that queerness, that we're not looking at queerness from thinking that it is from outside us or from outside our culture or a Western concept, but being able to see that we're just blinded to the things that already exist within our community, within our culture, which are queer, and being able to present that through music, through my music and my voice.
How important is community to you as an artist? And are there any collaborations or projects you have been a part of when living in Chicago, living in India? And how do you foresee that to kind of transition over us in Washington D.C. in the East Coast now that you're living in Washington D.C. and you're collaborating with us, for example, in New York City?
So we've been talking about queerness, we've been talking about transgression. One of the biggest transgressive, I would say, expression of music that I've been involved in was in India, where we looked at Amir Khusro's music. And one of the important things to talk about Amir Khusro is also he writes a lot of his poetry around Nizamuddin Aulia, which is also seen as a very symbiotic and queer relationship. So if you go to Delhi, their dargahs are side by side. And so not just that was queer, but also what was queer was collaborating uh, in presenting Amir Khusro's music in front of a great audience, which is a platform called Jashn Rekhta, one of the biggest Urdu festivals in the whole world, and presenting that through a combination of opera music, of also combining South Asian classical music with that, but then also presenting that whole performance in a narrative of Urdu storytelling, which is called Dastan Goi. I think that was I think that was the first step of being able to look at that traditional South Asian classical music doesn't have to be bounded by just how it has been traditionally performed, but how it can be very transgressive and be more collaborative. And another example in Chicago was more simplistic but very profound. Was I had a community of friends who are one of my closest friends and family to me, was musicians of different stages, in their different stages of music, of learning, coming together every month and choosing a rag and singing no matter what their level was, but also being able to learn from each other, being able to exchange notes, and being able to come together and collaborate and practice with no space of judgment. That it was a judgment space. Free space, and combining these two things, now that I'm collaborating with Royal Bengal Tea House and looking towards DC and looking towards New York, I think transgression and judgment free, I think, would be the two key words that I would like to explore in both these spaces, as to how do we transgress boundaries of South Asian music, but also how do we look at transgressions within South Asian music, and being able to collaborate with different musicians of different caliber, and also collaborate beyond South Asian music. How can South Asian music collaborate with different forms of music that exists in these different cities?
Thank you for sharing that. So, at Royal Bengal Tea House, as artists, we often um, try to create a sense of legacy. Try to teach younger artists life lessons that we have learned from our own journey as artists and as community builders. What would your messages be to the LGBTQ plus South Asian musicians and artists who would want to follow your footsteps?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think I'm also like still in my own learning process. But one of the things that I would like to like bring out the message and give not inspiration, but just like a message out there in the world is that because the society is so dismissive of the community, I think we as individuals should not be dismissive of the culture and dismissive of things that we have. South Asian culture is ours. South Asian music is ours as much as it any is of the non-queer people. And so nobody can take that away from us. And so being able to find queer voice in that culture, being able to reclaim that culture as your own. Look at from Methi language, if you see at Vidyapati. Vidyapati is a great queer artist if you look for your own words and own ideas there. If you look at Tagore's work, that's very, very queer, and it's how it's all about the lens that you are looking at it from. And then as queer South Asian artists, it is our responsibility to being able to present that lens to other audiences who do not understand, and bringing these big bridge or becoming the bridge between these two different communities who maybe don't understand each other, but being able to present that these are commonalities between them and there are commonalities between us.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today at Royal Bengal Tea House Adda. Bhargavi, we're really looking forward to concerts, collaborations, and more conversations like this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.